Thanks everybody for joining us today. I have a wonderful guest with me. Kristin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me. And hello, everybody. I am Dr. Kristin Tallent. I've been a pharmacist for almost 10 years now, and I started in independent retail pharmacy. That's where my love, my heart and soul really are. And excuse the nasally sound. I do have a cold, confirmed, not COVID. I've tested myself like five times. So anyway, again, I started in independent retail pharmacy, and that's kind of where the majority of my career as a pharmacist has been until relatively recently. I have transitioned into my own practice. I own a wellness clinic where we do functional medicine consultations and provide custom testing services. Obviously, to include COVID testing, we are a CLIA lab, and we've really dived into that deeply over the last year and a half or so, and it has been truly life-changing, and I actually love my career again, and it's just been incredible.
I love testing in the pharmacy. I'm a test junkie myself, which probably that's actually what led me down the kind of functional medicine pathway, even though I don't think it was even coined that term back in the day when I first had my pharmacy. But I had tests in my pharmacy. I had the Cholestech machine, and we did cholesterol and A1C, and we did the cortisol testing, and I was doing all kinds of stuff. Like if it interested me personally, I put it in the pharmacy, and then I was able to sell it because I was passionate about it. And so I think testing is a good revenue stream for pharmacies. It's often a cash-based revenue stream, which is kind of the golden goose for pharmacies, but you can get into billing or get in contracts, and you can do some more complicated things. But ultimately, patients will often pay cash for various testings, and that is true with COVID. Even though you can go get free tests somewhere at some clinic, people don't want to wait that long. It's not convenient for them. There's lots of reasons why they don't want the free test, and they're willing to pay for it. So I'm so glad that you were able to fit us in and get this in there. And Kristin, this group of pharmacy owners that you're talking to are really a kind of special group of pharmacy owners. So I held a Pharmacy Profit Summit live in Dallas last month, and these are everybody who basically came to that show. There was about 120 of them, and so they're really focused on growing the profitability of their pharmacy. And like I said, many of them were interested in testing, the little bit that we talked about it there, but definitely with questions afterwards. So everybody's going to want to understand like kind of the procedures of how to do it, and then really what's it mean to them for the bottom line. Obviously we know testing can be convenient for the patient, but besides screwing up your workflow, what's in it for pharmacies? And really there's some profit in it for them. So I know that we kind of had some chats before, and in the Facebook group, people posted some questions. And if you're listening to this live, feel free to post in your questions. Even if you're listening to the recording later, Kristin's in the group, and she'll be able to see all of the questions and comments. So if we completely miss something in today's session, go ahead and put it in there, and we can get back to you and answer those questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and go ahead and take us away and walk us through what this looks like for pharmacies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to start off just by kind of going over some of the foundational pieces, because I get a lot of the questions that I have to do with like, what is a CLIA lab? Can I be a CLIA lab? Kind of some of the basic stuff. So I wanted to start there. And so first of all, I want to start with who is the governing body. The Board of Pharmacy is not the governing body of a CLIA laboratory, and I think as pharmacists, that's the very first thing that we need to understand. So if you're shifting or sending a bunch of questions to your Board of Pharmacy and they're maybe giving you the runaround or whatever, like don't be surprised by that, because it's kind of exploded since COVID happened. A lot of Board of Pharmacy don't even have any laws on pharmacies or pharmacists being CLIA, owners of CLIA laboratories. And they're really, like I said, they're not the governing body. So who is? CMS, the FDA, and CDC, primarily CMS and the CDC, and like I said, the FDA. So they are the governing body of CLIA laboratories. but then it does vary slightly state by state. So you do have a little bit of changes and alterations in what you can do and what you cannot do as a CLIA laboratory, depending on what state you're in. Some are a little bit more strict than others, and it's really good to understand like kind of where your state falls. But that I like to start with. And an easy way to find out kind of more information on your particular state is a simple Google search. Just type in your state and then put CLIA laboratory. Most of the time, one of the top links will pop up because you want to look at your state governing body for laboratories. Because if you become a CLIA laboratory, then that's really who you're under. You want to follow all the laws and everything under your state's jurisdiction for laboratories, nothing pharmacy related. So I just wanted to touch on that. And then the next thing is just what does it mean to be a CLIA laboratory? So if you're applying, the very first thing that you want to do is realize that there are actually different levels of CLIA laboratories. So you have waived laboratories, you have moderate, and then you have high complexity. And that's what it's based on, is the complexity of the testing that you're offering and the processes behind the processing of the labs. So what we're talking about today, and what the majority, if pretty much not all, but majority of pharmacies are offering, are waived tests. They are a CLIA laboratory offering waived tests. And what that means is that you're offering tests at the lowest complexity that a CLIA laboratory can do, which means that there's little room for error. It's easy to train personnel on how to do these tests. And once they're trained and you're following the package insert, like I said, there's little room for error in misinterpreting either the results or messing up on how to process the test. So that's how these particular tests are able to fall under the status of waived. So that's a really foundational, basic thing that you need to understand. So when you are putting out your application and enrolling to become a CLIA laboratory, what you're doing is trying to open yourself up in order to offer waived tests. And in most states, not all of them, but in most states, that means that you can do any test that the FDA has considered waived. So that can go, I mean, it goes way beyond COVID. Like, let's say COVID stops tomorrow, even that's not happening. We're talking flu, strep, RSV, A1Cs, lipid panels, INRs, and then if you're interested in other things like HIV and STDs, there is a whole gamut of things that you can do. And so that really touches on what she said at the very beginning. It allows you the ability to bring something on that you're truly passionate about, maybe what you already see that your community needs, and you can provide that service, but also make it a profitable thing for your business. And when we're passionate about things, then it makes it so easy to sell and communicate with the patients in front of us. So it opens us up to a lot of different opportunity far and beyond COVID. But like she said, we're talking about COVID primarily today. And so the emphasis is primarily on diagnosing COVID with antigen and PCR tests, but then you can also do antibody tests as well for COVID. So the next question might be, well, how do I do this application? And the first thing you need is the CMS form 116. That is the federal form in order to become a CLIA laboratory. And then some states, again, not all, but some states have an additional application that you want to go ahead and fill out and actually send in with your CLIA application. So that's something that you would want to check on for your particular state. And I actually have a free video. It's literally less than 15 minutes that I'll go ahead and put in the comments after we're done here that will take you through the CMS 116 form, literally click by click, step by step, and you can go ahead and fill the application out right along with me. And one of the things that it doesn't necessarily ask for, but I suggest that every pharmacy sends with them, is the pharmacist, like a copy of the pharmacist license that you're using as your lab director. So when you're filling out that application, the lab director can be a pharmacist. And then the other thing that I get asked is the address that you should put on the application. The address that you're giving them on your application is supposed to be the address that you'll physically be doing your testing at. Now, there is a little caveat going on right now because of the pandemic. I like to think of it as an opportunity. But because of the pandemic, you actually do not have to do your COVID testing at that business address. So if your pharmacy is situated in, I don't know, your location isn't ideal for testing for whatever reason. Like I'll just give you an example. My office space that I have, is not a good place for COVID testing because it would require people to come in, and also my parking lot situation isn't very good. So offering drive-up service at my particular office is not really an option. So what I ended up doing, because they have already put a statement out saying that because of the pandemic, you can kind of do your COVID testing anywhere as long as you have your CLIA ID. You can team up with other businesses. Maybe you want to pay them a couple $100s to use their parking lot, or you just tag team with them and use part of their business. So I have partnered with a local gym and they allow us to use their site, and people come and utilize their parking lot, and we do drive-up testing right in their parking lot. So I'm just sharing that with you because that's a concern that a lot of people have, depending on how your business is actually physically situated in the area that you're in. And so again, how to apply, you want to fill out that CMS form 116 and then see if your state is requiring any additional application. And again, an easy way to do that is to just Google your state and then put CLIA application. It'll take you, typically it'll add the top couple websites will be the laboratory governing body of your particular state, and it'll have all those nuances on how you apply for a CLIA certificate in your particular state.
So when I recently went through and did it for Texas, the people in the office for CLIA, because Texas was separated into regions and in zones, they were really helpful, really, really helpful. It was the first time I'd talked to somebody in the government that was seemed enthusiastic about their job and was really helpful. So don't be afraid to reach out. I was expecting to kind of get a grumpy cat response, but they were very helpful, responded very quickly, answered their phones promptly, so if you're not sure about something in your state, and then when I kind of finished up with them, they let me know that, hey, because of the COVID, normally you have to wait to get your certificate in the mail, but now as soon as you submit your certificate, you're free to start testing. You don't have to wait. So that was a little tidbit but they were really helpful. So don't be afraid to reach out to your agencies.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because I've had that same experience, and I know others that have also had that same experience. I don't know what everybody's board of pharmacy is like, but it's a totally different entity, so you might get a little bit of a better.
Yeah, it was a much different experience. So
yeah, exactly. The other thing I wanted to emphasize that I forgot to mention is when you're doing your application, you actually don't have to pay the fee until you've been approved. So what I like to tell people is, and we're very type A. We tend to be type A. Everything has to be done 100% right. Just fill out the application and send it in the mail. If you're missing something or you're not allowed to do it or whatever, they will send the notifications back to you and literally typed up exactly what you need to change or whatever is needed in order to get it approved. So it's not really that big of a deal. But what happens is the typical process is once you send that application in, what you're waiting for tends to be about a month or so turnaround time. But because of COVID, they have expedited a lot of this. But you'll get a receipt almost stating yes, you've been approved. Then they'll give you all of the directions on how you pay that fee. And then once you pay that fee, which most of the time you can do online, they then send you your actual CLIA certificate that has your CLIA ID on it. And like she said, a lot of times so before you had to wait until you got that certificate in order to start testing. Some states have kind of lifted that mandate too. But I'll tell you, just my personal experience and other people that I do know, once you get that approval, them sending you your certificate typically happens within like a week or two. It's a pretty quick turnaround time once you pay your fee.
Yeah. I know the number one question that I get, and I'm sure you probably do too, is you have to list the tests that you're going to test for on your application. And what I tell people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I say list everything, like anything you think you might ever test. And so what I did is I just Googled FDA waived test, and some website had a list, and I literally copied and pasted and shrunk the font and fit it all in that box. So there was like literally every test that I can think of. I mean, my pharmacy's not doing HIV right now, but I could see in the future where we do that, and all these other things. And RSV is a big one right now because so many kids are coming down with RSV, not COVID. But don't be afraid. Like you're not paying per test. You're not, there's no restrictions other than if you're going to do it, it has to be on your application, and you have to go through it again if you want to add a test. And so it's really better just to put that work up front and figure out what you might be interested in and just put it all in there. Is that your suggestion?
Yeah, it kind of is. So that's what I typically tell people. But I also want to say, if that's going to stop you from putting your application in the mail, then list your COVID test and ship it out, because I don't want that to be like the fact that holds you back. Yeah, I mean, you're losing weeks because you're thinking about what you want to offer. Most states make it very easy for you. It's called a change form. You literally can just add tests, remove tests, change your address, whatever it is that you need to do. And so they do make it easy to make adjustments once you already have your CLIA ID.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you're not sure what COVID antigen tests you want to do or COVID, just list them all.
Yeah. And well, you don't know what's going to be in stock or available, like especially in the beginning when things were running out. That was an issue of, what's in stock. So
yeah, that was a major issue. And a lot of places are saying that that's not going to be an issue this year, but I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. But the link that I'll put in the comments later is actually the old CMS form. So the only change is that in the section that you're talking about, where you're actually listing your tests that you want to offer, it kind of sections it off into what you're testing. So on the left-hand side, you want to put what you're testing. So for example, COVID, and then in the center, it wants to know the brand name of the test. So again, let's say I'm doing COVID PCR, brand name of the test. Right now I'm using Acula, which is a really good quality PCR that delivers results in 30 minutes. And then on the right-hand side, you would want to put the manufacturer that actually makes that test. And I want to say it's Mesa Biotech or something. But if that gets anybody tripped up, that's how you organize that particular part of the CLIA application. So if you have any questions as we're talking, please don't hesitate to put the questions in the chat and we'll address those as we continue. But space requirements, you don't need a lot of space. You literally can do all of this testing off of a 2x3 cart, literally. Like I do all of our testing on a metal cart that has 3 levels on it. And then we store a lot of our PPE or whatever other supplies we need to test right in like plastic drawers on the cart. You don't need a large space. These analyzers and the machines, if you pick a test that needs a dock or an analyzer, they're not large. It's something that you can do on literally at your pharmacy in just a small counter space. Designate that to testing and everything can kind of sit there. And then you do have extra stock as you start ordering supplies, PPE and tests and whatnot, but you don't need a big space at all in order to provide these tests to your community. And the one thing I also like to talk about is how to determine what test to offer, because there are a bunch, and availability is huge. Obviously, price is another factor that you want to take into consideration, but also sensitivity and specificity. There are a lot of tests out there that have a really bad sensitivity. So a sensitivity is pretty much telling you your false negative rate. So if I have a sensitivity of 84%, that means that 16% of the time my negative tests are actually wrong. So that's almost 1 in 5. That's a lot of people. And so when you're trying to decide what test to bring on, it's good to understand what it is that this test is actually going to deliver, so that you can have those conversations with patients when they ask, first of all, because they're going to ask, and also too, that you can be confident about the product that you're offering. So, and then the specificity especially for the rapid tests, they tend to be, the specificity, which is the false positive rate, tends to be a lot less of a margin. So you might have a 0 or 1% chance of a positive being incorrect with a lot of the tests. Now that can go down to maybe like 5% depending on what you purchase, but again, it's just good to understand the test that you're offering. And a very easy way to find that information is just by looking up that particular manufacturer's tests package insert. They all have package inserts, and they have all of that information right in the package inserts.
There's also some really great organizations out there that have put together some tables. I've seen, like when I've just Googled, I Googled specificity care starts or something. Mm-hmm. And I've found some really good tables out there. I haven't really saved them per se or downloaded because, things were changing a lot when I was first getting my pharmacy set up. But, use Google and find that stuff. But there are some ones that have put together some nice tables. So we did have a couple of questions come through that kind of relates to right now. And I know one of the biggest questions is, where can I get these tests? Where's the best place to order? You'd mentioned the CLIA. I've used CareStart before, but there's probably even, other brands. And then, like you said, there's kind of 3 different tests. Well, not kind of, there is 3 different tests. There's the PCR, the antigen, and the antibody. And so maybe after you answer this question, you can kind of go into what's the difference between the 3 and why you might want to offer all 3, or maybe not offer all 3. But yeah, so people want to know, where can they get the tests?
So you, just like when you buy your drugs, you have McKesson, Cardinal, whoever else it is that you use. Same thing with tests. You have different manufacturers, and they're pretty much medical supply companies. So some of the ones that McKesson is one of them. If you already use them, you might be able to just, very easily order from them. Henry Schein is another supplier. Who else do I use? There's a company called Wilburn Medical. They are very easy to order through and have been great whenever I'm ordering my CareStar tests. And who else do I use? Thermo Fisher is another company. So what happens is these tests are, the actual manufacturer of these tests pick certain companies in order to actually be their distributor. So that's what happens is, if there's a new test that's coming out, you want to find out from the actual company that's making the test who their distributors are. And then you can go to their distributors and find out, ask your questions, pricing, and what does it take to create an account, and so on and so forth. Because not every company that I just listed offers all of the tests that I offer, but you can also see some duplicated too. And then to that point, your prices can vary. And what's nice, the one thing that is nice is that we're so used to creating these contracts behind our drug pricing when it comes to these companies. 99% of the time, unless you're actually contracting directly with one of the manufacturers of the tests, you're not creating any kind of contract. You're literally creating a business account and purchasing your tests. So there isn't any, spend minimum or anything like that. I mean, you literally can purchase your tests, which is nice. So, and to that point, it's a little bit the wild, wild west. You can negotiate your prices.
I was gonna say, you negotiate your price. Like they first offer, I remember it was like $22 a test. And it was like, oh, $19 a test. Oh, $15. Oh, 12. We'll give it to you for 12. And I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm at a used car lot here. And
yep, exactly. I was just about to say, it's like, well, car dealership A told me that they would give them to me for $17.50. Can you beat that, or at least match that? I mean, it's all day long. So if you just communicate if you're just nice, you approach it the right way, then a lot of times you can really kind of knock some dollars off of each test.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was like, don't be afraid to negotiate, and don't be afraid to like, hey, well, if I buy this other test from you, like, what can I, what is the combined discount that I can get? And, because that you're exactly right. So there's manufacturers of these tests, and most manufacturers are not going to create a distribution agreement with a pharmacy because you're just not buying enough. They want to be able to sell it. And I've talked to a lot of these guys, especially in the first 6 months or so of this, but they want to sell full pallets or full truckloads or, that kind of thing, which is way beyond the scope that pharmacies are typically looking at, unless you're trying to sell. Like, I had a couple of pharmacies that were interested in that when they were selling for like school. They were selling to like a school district or something like that, where, somebody wanted to buy 100,000 tests, for a county or something like that. So sometimes pharmacies can get into that. And if you do get into that, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you like on that kind of distribution model. I have a really great contact that does a lot of that, but it's very large orders. So typically who you're looking for is that distributor or that wholesaler that you want to think about, which they can then piece it out by the box, by the case, in much smaller quantities. And that's where their specialty is. So that's typically who you're looking for. Most manufacturers only have a handful of distributors, and it's usually either freely available on their website, or, like you said, call them up and get that list out there. So and I would recommend you guys, as you guys are in this group and many of you are like starting this, like, post in the group like, hey, I just got $12.50 or $15.25 for my test from this person. And that sometimes that can even be negotiated as a group rate. Like, if you're talking to somebody, say, hey, I'm in a group with a bunch of pharmacy owners that are testing, what could be our group price, and that kind of stuff. And so, and I'm even happy to jump on and help negotiate that with you. So don't be afraid, like you said, negotiate, ask for lower, ask what minimums need to be to hit certain pricing. That it is a little bit of the wild west, but it really comes out in your favor if you go for it. So
absolutely. And I like what you said about in your group, because we're all kind of in this together. And like, when you talk to people, it ends up, you can help one person, they can help you. It goes back and forth. Like, I was talking to somebody several months ago, and they were like, oh, I'm getting my Acula test for $65. And I was paying $95. So I was like, shit. So what I ended up doing is I reached out to one of the distributors, and I said, this is how you should word it. Sorry.
Sirens.
What is your price on the Acula tests? So then this person quoted me $55. She gave me the group rate instead of what should have been like $65 or $75, and they honored it. So you just never know what's going to happen until you ask.
Yeah. So can you touch really quick on the differences between the tests, the PCR, the antigen, antibody, and
Absolutely.
Why somebody would offer one or the other? So
the antigen test is a little bit, so number one, that's the rapid test. When people are talking about these rapid tests, you get the results in 10 minutes most of the time, depending on the test. And that's giving you quick results, and their false positive rate is super low. So if you get a positive on a rapid test, more than likely that's a correct positive. The only caveat to that is that there's a little bit of a higher false negative when it comes to these rapid tests. So like the example I said earlier, if you're seeing like a 16% chance of that false negative, those are because they're more than likely it's an antigen test. And so those are kind of like the top things that you should be looking at, or the different, what makes it an antigen test. Also, whenever you're talking about antigen versus PCR, it's how the test is actually delivering the positive or negative. And most of these COVID tests, if not maybe all of them, are qualitative. So they're literally just telling you positive or negative. It's not actually telling you a viral load or anything like that. So the other thing with the antigen test is they're a much cheaper test. So at this point, and this was not the same last year. Last year, they're running about 20 bucks a test. Now you can get them for less than $10 a test. So that's the antigen, and we retail for, personally, we do $129. A good way to figure out how much you want to sell your tests for is call some local urgent care places and tell them you don't have any insurance and ask how much their tests are. So it's gonna be about, give or take, $150 to $200, depending on what kind of test they're doing. So the next test is a PCR test, and that is the gold standard of testing, especially, we're in the height of COVID, it's coming back again, the swing is happening again. And so everybody knows that these PCR tests have been touted for being better, but what they don't realize is that you have the ability to have a PCR test that can deliver results in 30 minutes versus 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. When we start getting to the height of things again, if it's anything like last year, 10 and 14 day turnaround times, because these labs are overwhelmed. The Acula by Mesa Bio is a PCR test that processes in 30 minutes. So each doc that you purchase can process one test every 30 minutes. So if you get yourself multiple docs, then that just determines the amount of volume that your particular pharmacy would be able to manage. But with a PCR test, you're getting better accuracy. So for that particular test, the likelihood of a positive being wrong is like maybe 1%. The likelihood of a negative being wrong is about 3%. So, we're talking really great accuracy and confidence behind that PCR test. And there are other companies out there, but those right now are widely available, and the price point is really good. So like I said, I'm probably paying, and you might even be able to get it lower depending on your volume, or if you guys are able to put a group rate together, about $50 per test is what I'm paying for the PCR, and we're retailing that for $199. And look at that margin. It's enormous. And to that point though, when you're a CLIA laboratory doing waived only testing, you do not have any personnel requirements. So if one of your hesitations is that you don't want to swab people, you didn't become a pharmacist because you don't want to swab people, well, don't swab people. Just have one of your other people swab. It doesn't even have to be a technician. Like, you might have a really great cashier or front-end personnel, or you know what I mean? Somebody looking for a couple hours a week. Bring them in, train them appropriately, document that you've trained them, and they can literally administer these tests for you. And then the other one is an antibody test. So the antigen that I mentioned first and the PCR, those are diagnostic tests. Those are ones that we are finding out if the person has COVID or not when you're doing that test. The antibody test is looking at antibodies to see if they've been in contact with COVID in the past. So they're not sick, they're not curious if they're currently infected. They want to know if they have any protection, like immune protection against COVID. Or maybe they don't want to get the vaccine or something, then you can go ahead and look at antibodies. Even then, I don't tend to speak in very black and white terms when it comes to this. So if I get a negative result, you're negative at this time. That's one thing that I say. And I also let them know that it means that you more than likely don't have COVID. But you know what I mean? You can't guarantee anything.
Yeah, no, there's not enough studies. Frankly, COVID hasn't been around long enough for us to know what antibodies are out there. And then you get into T cells and memory cells, and the immune system is much more than antibodies, no matter on what side, like you said, of the aisle that you're on. And the fact that you have antibodies, we don't really know what that means. And the fact that you don't, we don't really know what that means. But hey, people are curious and they want to know. And that's A-okay. We're here to give you the test, to help you with that. So I'm so glad that you brought up the fact that it does not have to be the pharmacist. Yes. So many people ask, like, can my techs do this? And it's like, actually, like you said, as a waived lab, it's trained personnel. Like it's kind of a vague term, but well, what does training mean? Do I have to send them off? No, you just have to document. So document, I, Lisa Faast, as the laboratory director for my pharmacy, has verified that Mary Smith and Jack Jones have taken the tests and have shown that they could do these tests on this day. You know, everybody signs, and that's your source of documentation. And now Mary and Jack can go do the testing for you. And so it doesn't have to be, and there's so many pharmacists that are looking for like side gigs, you know, that's kind of the thing. You know, if you need somebody and you don't know, like there's a pharmacist moms group, there's a ton of like state, local job groups, like just post on there like, hey, we're willing to pay you kind of part-time or per diem or whatever, you know, to come in and do that. Or, you know, there's just so many different ways to do that. So I'm very glad that you brought that up, because that was definitely one of the questions that I know that people had asked before. So speaking of diagnostics, so you mentioned the PCR and the antigen. What are the reporting requirements? And this is going to vary a bit by state, I understand. But what are the reporting requirements for somebody doing those diagnostic tests? Because on the antibody test, there is no reporting requirement because, again, you're not diagnosing somebody with COVID. But for the PCR and the antigen, are there mandates federally, or does it vary by state by state?
Yeah, my experience is that it varies state by state. So it's definitely something you want to be aware of with regard to your reporting requirements. And my state is that you have to report your results to our state database within 24 hours. So we have a process in place that we have somebody who does all of the reporting at the end of every single day. It's just part of your closeout of your pharmacy is what you could do. And again, it's all going into a state database. And then you also want to make sure you're documenting that those people have actually been reported to the state. And another reason to do this is because I actually got audited. So
hey, one more type of audit.
CMS contacted me from my state, and they said, we want to do an audit on, and we want to make sure you're reporting. We want your standard operating procedure for reporting, and we want proof that you're actually reporting. And thank my lucky stars above, because what we were doing is we do everything through a patient portal. So patients book through the patient portal, they fill out their questionnaire through the patient portal, they pay through the patient portal. We send the results through the patient portal, and then we're even able to put internal notes in there. So we just ironically had been putting our internal note, you know, that our reporting had been done for that patient. And the way our system is set up, it timestamps it, date, time, and the person who created that internal note. So we were easily able to send that over, but you definitely want to document and keep proof that you are following your particular state's reporting requirements. I was shocked that they reached out to me, but she said she had 2% of laboratories in my state that she needed to audit. So I was one of the 2%.
That's what you get for being popular, Kristin.
Yeah, I guess.
So what we did in our pharmacy, just to kind of give you, we weren't super fancy in having a patient portal, but is we just got the Avery labels, you know, like those address Avery labels, and created a Word doc and put in, you know, pre-filled out forms. So then when somebody did it, all they had to do was like sign and date and stick that on the patient questionnaire. And because we're in Texas, and Texas you got to upload, and I don't know, because I'm not the pharmacist or the tech that does it, but you know, there is a reporting requirement that it has to be uploaded in so many days. And so that was kind of their documentation, because we had a bunch of different, especially in the height of it, we had a bunch of different people doing it. So that way that sticker was really more for internal, like, hey, this one was already done, you don't have to do it, you know, it was really, but like you said, it does come back and help you in case of that. So Eric has a great follow-up question about proof of documentation you give to patients. So either the documentation that you give to them as a negative or positive, like, is there any requirements around that documentation?
I don't think that there are any requirements, to be honest with you, but there's like a typical standard that people tend to follow, you know. So what's included in my results documentation is obviously whether they're positive or negative and what test was done, their name and date of birth. You obviously want your patient identifiers, and then what does a positive or what does a negative mean? And then it's always good to link some additional resources for that patient to go ahead and reference if they need any more information. I mean, you're always safe with a CDC and FDA or your local state links. That's pretty much what I stick to, or your local health department. And then you do want to make sure your CLIA ID is on there and your contact information. And then whenever you start getting involved in PCR testing, it actually opens up a whole other opportunity to help people who are traveling.
Yes.
So that has been huge this summer, especially. And when it comes to traveling, there's a couple other nuances that you need to be aware of, because it varies depending on the destination that people are going to.
Yes. I've heard those horror stories of people landing in Hawaii and not having the right test or the right paperwork, and they have to fly back, get tested, and then fly back. I'm just like, that is ludicrous. Like, I just don't even understand that, but they're out there. So there's weird requirements. So you want to make sure that so if you have somebody and they're traveling, it's very important to ask that, where are you traveling to? What are the restrictions, and make sure that you do give them anything that's special, because normally your testing proof, it really can just be a simple piece of paper. I recommend doing it on pharmacy letterhead, because that kind of takes all the requirements of like your contact information and makes it look a little more official. But I've had friends who've gotten, just looks like somebody just typed it up on a typewriter. I mean, it looks like, it's just a plain piece of paper that basically just says what you put on there. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to follow any formal, form or say anything in particular. To follow back up on the reporting requirements, Sarasha had asked if there's a way to simplify it. So I'm not really sure, I think that's a little bit too vague of the differences of the states. Sometimes if you put it in an Excel file, you can upload a CSV or something like that. I think, Sarasha, it's going to depend a little bit on the state that you're in and how their portal or interface works. I do know that some PMS software systems and some systems like Prescribe Wellness, and some of the other like clinical based programs or the EHR systems can have some connectivity or APIs behind the scenes and share that information. But you're just going to have to dig into it with any software that you use and your state's portal to know whether or not if they integrate with anybody. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to touch on that, just to share with you what we do is I actually schedule out a full month. I have a couple people that do my reporting. Like they've just been assigned, they're cool with it. And so I schedule out a full month. That if I have you on a particular day, that means you're handling the reporting from that day's worth of patients. And what we can do in the patient portal that I use is you can filter the day. So you're only seeing the patients from today. And then you go patient by patient and look at the internal notes and all the documentation and use that to report, notate that you have reported, move on to the next person, notate that and they could do it from home. It's not like you have to do it in the pharmacy.
I was going to say, and at the Pharmacy Profit Summit, we had a session about virtual assistants, and this could be something that would be perfect for a virtual assistant type, whether you don't have to go full blown and get somebody from the Philippines. You can just get somebody who's looking to work from home. Maybe they have a kid whose daycare is closed and they're willing to do some computer work for you. And the fact that, most of these testing requirements have 24 or 48 hour, reporting requirements. So just schedule them, on every weekday from, 2 hours a day. It could be while their kids napping or playing or whatever. And, and they go in there, like you said, and they have the documentations, they have access to your system, and they go in. Now, whenever you do use somebody like that, you want to make sure that they meet all the other requirements of like HIPAA and if what access they're getting to. So you want to make sure that you put them all through that. But this is a perfect example of using a virtual assistant or remote type of work. Some technicians and things, if they do come down sick or maybe they're quarantining or something, this is perfect work at home types of activities that they can be doing that will help make all of your testing easier. So
absolutely.
Let's see. Truman asked about operating procedures. So you mentioned earlier, like when you had your audit, they wanted to see your standard operating procedures. As I know you have a course that kind of walks pharmacy owners like through like this whole process. Do you also kind of give them some templates for some of those SOPs? I know myself when I first started creating SOPs, I used to get so nervous because I thought they had to be like this, manual. And really I found out that it's just, hey, this is what we do. And you're just documenting it. And so I've learned to become very comfortable with SOPs, but I know that fear. So tell us a little bit about like what other resources you have to help pharmacies make this as like turnkey as possible.
Absolutely. So yes, as part of the course, I have a whole, what I call is the compliance binder. So it has like your SOPs, it has your training materials that you're going to need. It has other policies and procedures, how to do the tests, what else you'll need, like as you add additional tests in the future. It's pretty much like all your paperwork, your binder that you would pull out if CMS were ever to come into your pharmacy. And it's like 40 or 50 pages, and it just really outlines all of that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, standard operating procedures, it sounds scary. It sounds like it has to be like some legal document, that none of us really even like to deal with. But yes, I provide a template. It's nothing. We kind of overcomplicate it. So it's a very simple template, but it does the job, and it will help so that whenever you're training people, instead of getting the same question every time you hire a new person or somebody's trying to fill in, it'll literally outline what they should and shouldn't be doing. So, but that's why I called my course the Plug and Play Point of Care Testing Profit Program, because it is plug and play. Like, this isn't just one of those courses that's going to kind of like help you scratch the surface and then you're left with 5,000 more questions. I have spent so much time and effort navigating these waters, and I see all the value that we're able to provide as pharmacists to our local communities. And like I said earlier, like I love independent pharmacy, and it's struggling right now. Like we have to get very creative. But if testing is something that you're interested in, this course will take you through application, through setup, what office supplies you want, what tests you should order, who to order them from, all the way down to policies and procedures, how to train your people, how to answer your phone. And then if you even wanted the same patient portal that I use, it's very cost effective, and it automates the whole thing so that you're not answering a million questions or trying to, book appointments over the phone. It's super easy. And then that results documentation that we were just talking about, that's electronically sent to them right through the patient portal too. So we don't touch paper. Unless we have somebody who comes, and they literally can't fill everything out. That's a different story. But they're few and far between. And so I would love for people who are interested in it to take me up on the opportunity to do the course. Your revenue potential and the ability for you to help your local community kind of get through what we're anticipating as the next wave is absolutely huge. To give you guys some numbers, we did about 2,000 tests last season. That's enormous. What could that make your whole pharmacy look like? If your average margin per test is about $125, what does that look like for your pharmacy? And even if it's not testing, if I can give a little bit of a pep talk, like we're in this shift right now, right? As pharmacies, and really as pharmacists, but especially independent pharmacies, they're trying to squeeze us out. And it's absolutely ridiculous. But what testing does is that it gives you the opportunity to show your community that you are able to do other things than dispense medication. And then they can start looking at you as a health hub. And that is where your pharmacy needs to go. And if that scares you, that's okay, because there's so many people out there that want to help. You learn all of these things. It's not complicated. It's just stuff that maybe we're not familiar with. But as soon as they start looking at you as a health hub, and they're paying you cash for a service, you're answering your phone, your appointments run on time, you deliver their results quickly, you know what I mean? You're accessible. Once they start doing that, you can start bringing in all kinds of other services, like whatever it is that you want to turn your pharmacy into, this opens that door, whether it's functional medicine consultations, pharmacogenomics, maybe you're interested in chronic care management or remote patient monitoring, like all of these things are lucrative additions to what you're already doing. So you can become a health hub that also dispenses medication, not we dispense medication and we might do a couple of these other things. Yep. So find what you're passionate about and just get it going, because there is opportunity. It's just requiring a huge shift right now.
Yep. Oh man, you're speaking my language. I love PGX testing and RPM. And I mean, all the acronyms, I am all for it. That's what I'm always telling pharmacy owners is, it's never been tougher right now in pharmacy, but there's also never been as much opportunity as there is now. Like I truly firmly believe that there's more ways to make money now than there were last year, and the year before. And the PBMs are getting tighter and tighter, but that doesn't mean that you have to, like you just shift a little bit and it's going to feel weird. We're all doing new things. Anytime you do something new, it certainly does. So as we kind of wrap it up today, and Kyle did post that, Beth did post her samples of negative and positive letters in the group. So there's some examples in there from Beth. Thank you for sharing those. And, feel free, for everybody to ask, people, what are they charging? Kristin gave what she's charging for people. Your community might be higher, might be lower. It is kind of local. So I think her advice on calling urgent care and saying, hey, I think I might have COVID. I don't have insurance. How much do you charge? Is the perfect way to do a little reconnaissance and find out what your local going rate is. Because you don't want to undersell yourself. Don't just stick a $59 price tag on there. When you could get 99. I mean, that's a big difference, and it means a lot in terms of margin. And when you really start getting this going, Kristin's mentioned 2,000 tests. I've known pharmacies that have done thousands of tests, and it's multiple six figures of additional profit that they have added to their pharmacy. And this is a big opportunity. This is a big opportunity from a clinical perspective, as Kristin was just saying. That shift is happening, and we need to showcase our clinical side as pharmacists, but it is a huge opportunity for your bottom line. Let's not beat around the bush here. There is money to be made, and people are willing to pay cash for it. And you don't have to worry with all the paperwork of billing and all of that. So I don't see any additional questions. I think I kind of wrote down all the answers or the questions that people had asked. So I think we covered them all. Obviously, if something comes to mind from somebody and you're watching this later, watching the replay, go ahead and post that question. Kristin's gonna stay in the group for a while to make sure that any post mastermind call questions and comments and stuff, and we'll post all the links to everything that Kristin just said. I know many of you are probably like, yes, I want the step-by-step profit plan for testing. And again, this goes beyond COVID. Yes, attract people in, my marketing hat I'll put on. Attract people into your pharmacy with COVID, which is what they're interested in now, but offer other things. Make sure you get their contact information, add them to your email list, let them know, sell them supplements when they're in there getting tested. Even if they're negative, they're concerned about their health, get them on some antioxidants, get them on vitamin D, use this opportunity to drive traffic with people that are willing to pay you money for valuable recommendations and services and products that they want. So, I think that's about it for today. We'll give you 5 minutes back of your day. And thank you so much, Dr. Kristin, for joining us and sharing your knowledge. And I just really appreciate, I know you've helped so many pharmacies, and I'm so excited for the people in this group to get a little bit of your awesomeness into their pharmacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And not to hijack the end, but I just want to let everybody know that I don't even have a pharmacy. And over the last 10 months, we're approaching $600,000. If you did one test a day at $200 a test, that is 6,000 extra dollars of revenue in your pharmacy. If you literally did one, literally one test a day. So, I mean, what could that look like? It's huge. And so for everybody in this group, I'll post the link to the course if you're interested, but I'm also going to give you guys a promo code. So if you use and purchase, you'll get an extra 15% off if you buy by the end of the day on Friday. So all the way through Friday, you'll get an additional 15% off the course. And I'll also put my email in there if you guys have any questions or you want to book an additional call. If you haven't to answer any questions, I'm here. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That's very generous of you. And thank you really for sharing your time and your expertise and pouring into the group that I know you're going to. So I really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you next time.
All right.